Welcome to the Blind Zone, where curiosity brings its own reward. And what am I curious about today? I'm curious because I have a guest, and we're going to find out how Rob became a Christ follower. And his story is really fascinating. And I met him through my executive producer, Cindy. So, first off, let's welcome Rob, and then we'll get to his story. So, welcome, Rob. Thanks for coming. Can you tell
Hi,
me a little bit about yourself before we get started?
thank you. Yes, I am a contractor. I do bathroom renovations, and I like it. I have my wife and a daughter, and I'm thankful that the Lord has given me uh, that industry to because with that industry I'm able to meet people, new people, and I like to help out, and but yeah, I'm a contractor by trade, but along the way, I'm gonna tell you about God, what God has done in my life that has changed a little bit of my trade.
Well, and that's because when I was talking to Cindy a while ago, she said, "Oh, I met Rob and he had this fabulous testimony." And I said, "Oh, good. Then he can come on the Blind Zone and tell us all because I love a testimony story because I think that when other people hear other people's stories, it really lets them think, oh, that's a lot like what I was or how I was." And then we're all called in a different way.
Hmm.
So I know your story goes back quite a ways to your youth, and that's even more exciting. So I don't want to say how were you before you came to know the Lord, but just start the explanation of how you came to know Christ and when that happened.
Um, yeah, going back to when I was 7 years old, I grew up in Catholic um, church, and my grandmother, took me to catechism classes, and I loved it. I learned so much about God in there. I had good uh, teachers there, and I loved um, learning about the Lord. And I started to. I mean, I couldn't wait every Sunday afternoon when they had those classes to go and just come over and learn about God. But in the same time, there was a soap opera, kid soap opera that I was airing, and in there was a 7 year old, same age as me, 7 year old who was in a Catholic school, and when I saw this kid in class, and she would get in trouble from time to time, but she was so God-centered that when she talked to God, was in a way like what we doing right now. Was like a personal way that when I saw that, I was like, wow. So it impacted me so much how this kid being in her room by herself and having that dialogue with God, and I mimic all of that. She would because see, praying is like just talking to God. So she would talk to God like for anything. She if she would get in trouble, she would say, "Lord, I just did this, that. I'm sorry." But with that, a personal relationship that she had, and I saw that soap opera for like 3 years, and like I said, I follow everything that she did, and that stood with me till today. I'm able to have that dialogue with the Lord ev- everywhere.
So, but how did that? Because that's great. Because that's something that I've often said. If I had somebody come alongside of me in my youth and just help me along instead of me bumping along by myself, my life would have gone in a way different
Mhm.
trajectory. So you had that as a solid way. But what else happened as you got older and life happens and you know you're no longer a teenager? What came next for you?
Yeah, what came next was, I'm 19 years old, 19, 20 years old, I'm out of high school and going to college and the workforce. I didn't have time then to go to church because, on my teen, I would go to church. My mom and dad would take me to church. We would go, but then, you are in your 20s and you don't have much time
Hmm.
to go to church. Sometimes, it was in my case that I would work on weekends also. So, and then after that, 25, at the age of 25, I came to, to a group, and that's where I kind of reconnected. Yeah, but on my early 20s, I kind of, uh, I wouldn't say put church on the side, but my relationship with the Lord, was still the same. I just didn't go to church back then.
Hmm.
Mm.
So were you still attending at that point? Were you still attending a Catholic church?
Yes,
Okay,
yes, I was.
so that is that where the group met when you were 25? So you met again through another Catholic church
No,
organization?
we met through a non-denominational
Okay, okay,
church.
okay. So what happens after that? Now you're 25, you've reconnected, and you know, because life is still busy, but do you see the value of church again? I mean, I'm glad that you said that your relationship was still the same as before. You still had that connection because sometimes when people you know, get to that age, they break that connection because they
Mhm.
think, well, you know, I can do this on my own or whatever it is we say in our heads. So from 25 on, what happened after that?
Yeah, so I was reconnected, and I met, he wasn't even a preacher, but he was somebody who knew the Lord. And he would come through, some conventions, and he would just talk about the Lord in a way that for me was different. It was like, wow, I like that person because he just talking about the relationship that he has with the Lord, and that helped me a lot to understand God because there was a person who understands God, who speaks about God all the time, and I was like, wow, I love that. And the feeling I had, remember, he did a altar call, and when that altar call came, I was, in my heart, I wanted to come to the front of the altar call because I felt like, they were pulling me, right? And I didn't go. And I waited the following year, and I think 2 years passed, and I was like, man, I don't want to go there because then people will see that I'm a I'm a sinner or everything. But I remember that when he made an altar call, I went and I received Christ um, in publicly. Going back to when I was a kid, I was raised, I would say Christian, but that day, I received Christ, and he um, he said, "Okay, you're next." I mean, it was a whole lot of people in front, to the altar call, and he said, "Okay, you have a week to get water baptized." I was living in New York back then, and in New York, it's not like here in Georgia. There's a lot of churches.
Hmm.
Up in New York, this is yeah, like let me see, 20 years ago, there were I didn't know of any church that I can go to and say, "Hey, can you baptize me?" And I didn't understand right because I thought that I only had 1 week, but it was like 1 week because the altar call ceremony is fresh in me. But if it took longer, I might, drift away or something, or not drift away, or drift away from that call.
Mm-hmm.
So I couldn't find a church, and I did not get water baptized, within that week, because I thought it was a week that I had. So 7 days passed, and I didn't do it. So I was like, wow, I missed it. And I
Yeah.
didn't do it until 12 years later.
But the circumstances at that point were way different. You understood it differently, but I agree with his point. If you don't do it now and make your public profession, because you hear people say all the time, I did the sinner's prayer, and then they walk away and then they just resume life.
Hmm.
And I think about when you were talking in the beginning about your relationship with God, through the Catholic Church and all that, it reminds me of the Apostle Paul when he meets up with Lydia, and she knows a lot about God, but she doesn't have the Spirit. And so it sounds like at some point you knew a lot about God, and then you came into a relationship with Christ, which was, Spirit led, and so that took you on a different path.
Hmm.
So the 12 years later, now, because I got to tell you, I became a believer at 25, and I didn't get baptized till 2018.
Hmm.
And so that was a lot of, don't try to do the mental math, long time.
Hmm.
And so, but again, I didn't understand the reason for the water baptism. So 12 years later, and how was it that your baptism came about at that point?
Yeah, it was amazing because in New York, remember we moved 2007 here to Georgia, and one of my dear friends, he called me and said, "Hey, welcome to Georgia, and I'd like to invite you to church." We went. Remember, it was yeah. We went, and when I was there, before the service, they do the baptism, and I saw that. And when there were two people being baptized that day, and after the baptism, um, the preacher said, "Okay, if anybody of you would like to get water baptized, just come get the information about it, and you can get water baptized next week or whenever you want." And I was like, wow, I'm ready. I went to get the information and everything. A week later, I'm getting water baptized, and I remember being in front of maybe two people, two, three people maybe, and I felt that the Lord said, "This is all you needed to do." So I went into the water, and I remember the following week, I I felt different in a way that, when I would read the Bible, I would understand it. And for me, it was like when reading the Bible, it was like a veil was taken off my eyes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And not only that, but I mean, a lot of things changed. And all the things that changed was that the Lord would give me ideas, things, and I would write them. I was telling one of my friends when that was happening, and he said, "Rob, what God is doing with you is that He's downloading some information." And I was fast to write everything that
Mm-hmm.
He was giving me. And as I'm writing, I'm like, wow, this is so good. This can help a lot of people. And it took maybe 6 months. I'm writing and writing and writing, and at the end of 6 months, I see that a notebook is filled with all of these things that I received,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm reading what I had written, and I'm like, wow, this is not me. This is not me, and that became a book that that those writings became a book. But I'm gonna let. Do you want me to tell you about those
Oh, please,
writings?
please,
Okay.
because I have the gift of prophecy, and so the Lord tells me stuff, and when I tell other people, generally they don't want to hear what I'm telling them, but that's not the point. So I really am glad because I've said things to people that after I said it, I thought I that wasn't me at all. I
Hmm.
never would have said that. So he's used you. So tell me about the book, please.
Yeah. Okay. So after I got water baptized, I remember getting after writing and getting after God, because one of the reasons I moved to Georgia was like I was doing construction over there. I was a general contractor there, and I got tired. I did it for 7 years. So my goal for coming here was like, okay, I have a young daughter who was 4 years old at the time, my wife, and I wanted to enjoy life. And but the first thing that I wanted was uh, wanted to get closer to God, and He allowed me to do that. So I'm after God. I'm going to men's group. That
Mm-hmm.
helps a lot. Helps a
Mm-hmm.
lot in your growth in the Lord. So I'm reading the Bible and all of that, and I had what I called a re-encounter with Jesus. Now, re-encounter with Jesus is deeper than just an encounter. An encounter is just you meet and suddenly, and that's it. But a re-encounter with Jesus is it changed my life. And to give you an idea of what a re-encounter is it's like when the disciples, they walked with Jesus. They saw every miracle that Jesus did, but yet they 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 didn't understand it. They
They doubted, yeah.
they doubted,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And when they saw him on that cross, they probably said to themselves, "Wow, we spent 3 years and look at him
For nothing.
for
3 years for
nothing."
nothing. Yep.
So they buried Jesus, but then on the third day he came, right? Showed them the mark on his body. Then they believed. So that's the re-encounter. That's when they actually know, they sold down now that this is the Son of God, this is the Messiah, this is the one who came for us. See, because before they all left. They all left them alone, right? They all run for their lives. But after that re-encounter that they had, they were sold out. That they had to give their lives. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they gave their life for him. Today, when I see society, same thing is happening. A lot of people are walking with the Lord just like the disciple before the resurrection. That they,
That's exactly right. I've never thought of it that way, but that's exactly right. A lot of people are walking like they're shoulder to shoulder with Jesus, but
mhm,
that Jesus isn't living in them through the power of the Spirit.
exactly.
Huh, this is well worth this, the whole thing was just wrapped up in that sentence. I'm sorry. Go on.
Yeah,
Tell me
yeah,
about your
no,
book. Go on.
yeah. So that's what it is. A lot of people walking with the Lord, and that's not wrong. I mean, that's good. That's good.
But it's
But
not enough.
it is not enough.
Okay. Okay.
They need to have that re-encounter. And the book came about where the Lord would take me. That's the title I got, re-encounter. The Lord would tell to take me to the book of the Old Testament and the New Testament of people who had a re-encounter with Him. For example, Abraham. Abraham on uh, Genesis 18, the first on just 18. verse 5, he meets with God face by face. And when you read that, you're going to see that story there. And also, it took me when Moses meets with God in the burning bush. You know, a re-encounter that Moses had, because Moses, just like me, you know, he grew up knowing God. He grew up walking with God, but he did not know him personally.
Yep.
And he came to know God personally at that moment when he came to the mountain. And then he took me did different people in there. Also, he took me in the New Testament where Paul knows about the Lord, right? But not until that day when he's going to Damascus and he gets blinded. I mean, that story is amazing, where he had that re-encounter, and after that, Paul was what? Transformed. He was transformed just like I was when I had my re-encounter with the Lord, my 40 years old, when I was 40 years old.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Okay, so how did you? So the name of your book is Reencounter,
re-encounter with Jesus.
Reencounter with Jesus, and so show the people the book and tell them how
Oh
they
yeah.
can get it, because I think that's fascinating. He told you to write a
Hmm.
book, and he told me to start the Blind Zone, and so
Hmm.
we'll see who's more successful. I'm kidding about that. Anyway, we're both obedient, and I like that. I like the
Hmm.
obedience of just hearing and writing it down and putting it
Hmm.
into some practical way, because Cindy and I did a Blind Zone episode a couple weeks ago, and it was called "I'm a Character," and we
Hmm.
went through the Bible and decided who we most look like in the Bible,
Hmm.
because the Bible is a very good, accurate representation of what life is. And so to point out to people what the re-encounters were is just so valid, because people can have a relationship with God
Hmm.
like Lydia did, and then through the transforming power of the Spirit, like the disciples did after the resurrection,
Hmm.
that was their re-encounter. Because you're right, before, when they were shoulder to shoulder with Jesus, they would run away,
Hmm.
but after their re-encounter, they all died for Christ,
Hmm. Yeah.
and except for Judas, who killed himself. But the point is their re-encounter was so significant that it changed the trajectory of everything they did from that point forward. And
Hmm.
and I just love that you put that in book form, and that it was all inspired by the Spirit to write it down so people can read it. So
Yeah.
how do people go ahead and get your book?
Yeah. They can go to Amazon and get it there. Amazon or Barnes and Noble.
Okay.
Uh,
Is it available on Kindle or just in print?
both.
Okay.
Yeah. And this is my first of 5 books. I was talking about the burning bush, and the Lord again put that one title also. It's called "Take Your Sandals Off," and that's about holiness, And the last book that I did was it's called a Understanding Grace.
Okay, so how many books have you written? You said
I have five
you've
five
written
books.
five.
Hmm.
Okay, fabulous. So tell me from one, two, three, four, five. The first one is called
Re-encounter with Jesus.
Re-encounter with Jesus. The second one is called
It's called Take Your Sandals Off,
Take Your Sandals Off. The third one,
and then One Flesh,
One
the
Flesh.
secret to a blessed marriage.
Huh, okay. And the fourth one?
And the fourth one was my story. It's called My Re-encounter. And,
Okay.
and the last,
So that's the my re-encounter,
it's my personal
that your
story.
personal story.
Hmm.
Okay. And the fifth one,
The fifth one is Understanding Grace.
Understanding Grace. And so you should tell people your full name so that they know how, when they're looking this stuff up, so that they know
Hmm.
they're getting the correct books.
Yeah, they can go to again to Amazon, and my author name is Roberto Hernandez.
Okay.
So they can either print the title in, or just Roberto Hernandez author.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that would come about.
I mean,
Yeah.
because again, one of the things that has really struck me, because, like I said, I've been a believer for 25 years. And as I grow in the Lord and as I, grow in the Spirit, He just takes me on a better and better path that I never would have expected. But the
Hmm.
one thing He wants out of everything I've ever done is obedience. So I'm
Hmm.
so thankful that you were obedient when He told you to write this down,
Hmm.
and then He gave you a way to put it into book form so that other people can get it in their hands.
Hmm.
Because I really like the theme, and especially the re-encounter. These are the people that it happened to in the Bible.
Hmm.
And then with the my re-encounter, your own personal story. I mean, I think this is just fabulous. And again, when Cindy and I were talking the other day, I said, because honestly, we've invited you, a number of months ago, and then she said, are you sitting down? Rob just contacted me and he
Hmm.
wants to do this on Friday. And I said, this is all God's perfect timing, because a couple of weeks ago, I was led to do something, and I see that our discussion today is a culmination of that,
Hmm.
and that you were supposed to be here today, and everything that you said. I just cannot even tell you how thrilled I am that you have written this stuff down, that's going to be such a place for people to land and read
Hmm.
and understand that this is spiritual, and we're in a spiritual war, and they
Yeah.
can fight the spiritual battle with the things that you've written. This,
Hmm.
this is just fabulous. Is there anything else you want to say before we wrap this up? And again, I just have to thank you for your willingness to do this
Yeah.
and your
Thank you.
obedience to the cause.
Yeah. I just wanted to share my re-encounter, and what it was is, I remember turning 40 years old. I remember my sister calling me and say, "Hey, Rob, happy birthday." And I said, the first thing I said was, "Yeah, wilderness no more." Because I remember, as you know, the story of the Israelites who
Mm-hmm,
been
mm-hmm,
wandering for
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
40 years. I mean, 40 years, 40, number 40 is like
Everywhere in the Bible, 40,
everywhere in
40,
the world.
40. Yeah, how? Yeah,
So
yeah.
I was 40 years old when I had my re-encounter. And what it was this, is that, again, I was, after the Lord praying and everything. I remember being praying. I remember I was praying in my bedroom, and then I go to the bathroom. And as I go to the bathroom, I mean, my eyes are still closed because I'm praying, praying, praying. And all of a sudden, I feel the presence of the Lord right in front of me, like right there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
In that moment, God became so real to me that my life, in that moment, that one moment, I felt that my life was turned 360 degrees. I was changed forever. Now I was like, wow. And I didn't want to open my eye because I didn't want that
You wanted to
experience
break. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't want to
That's
break
fabulous.
it. But that moment, oh my gosh, before that moment, I only knew of God. Although, I writing and everything, all I knew was about God. But that day, I knew God.
Yeah.
Just like Moses did, just like Abraham did, just like Paul did. I did that, just like his disciples did. And that changed my life forever. And I've been living my life since, I'm 56 right now. So 16 years ago, I've been living my life, not just walking with the Lord, but knowing that the Lord walked with me. It's amazing. It's amazing. You talked about today, this time I mean, it's been a couple of months, I mean, a few months that we wanted to get together and do this, but it's a perfect timing. And I think today is a perfect time.
Well, and I'll tell you another reason why it's the perfect timing, because you mentioned your birthday, and I had a birthday a few days ago. And up to that point, I had been thinking, what's going to change? But the Lord showed me that from my birthday forward, that everything I do is going to be centered on Him, focused on Him.
Mhm.
I'm going to have laser vision according to Him. And everything I do, it's going to be, is this getting me closer to the Lord
Mhm.
or further away? And if it's further away, it gets cut out.
Yeah.
Necessary endings, not doing that anymore.
Mhm.
And so when Cindy said we were meeting, I'm like, this is perfect because this is going to fit in with that program.
Mhm.
And so, your birthday was a catalyst and my birthday's a catalyst. And the fact that we're here together and we have similar, but not similar stories at all. But the thing we have in common, we love God, we trusted His Son for our salvation,
Mhm.
and we're following the Spirit, and we're doing whatever, we're being obedient to whatever it is He has told us to do.
Amen.
That right there, because like I know when King Saul, was told to do something, and Samuel comes up and says, "Well, what's the bleeding I hear in my ears?" So he wasn't obedient, and I never want the Spirit to say, "We told you to do this, and you decided to do it your way."
Mhm.
Don't
Yeah.
want that at all, because there's no blessing in that. There's just more me and
Mhm.
nowhere I
Yeah.
want to be. So, anything else you want to say before we conclude this? Because again, Rob,
Yeah.
this has been
Um,
fabulous.
yeah, one of the things that I like to say is that, when I see the books that God has given me to write, I tell people, it's not me. Writing a book wasn't even on my, on my to-do list. It wasn't even something that I wanted to do, but God just gave me that, and I like it. So my prayer is, Lord, I like this. I think I like it better than laying tile. So I
Go
said, Lord,
figure.
I'm
Yeah,
ready whenever you
yeah,
you know
yeah,
you
yeah,
you
yeah.
you you want this book to make it big. You
Even if it, yeah, whoever it impacts, that, because before we started this, I prayed, give us the words we need to say, and
hmm
then pour this into the ears that need to hear it. Because honestly, I was told to do the blind zone, and I'm like, that's just ridiculous. But I've been obedient, and it isn't about who's watching it,
hmm
because I've learned more about myself doing these episodes
hmm
than I ever would have had I not had to say it out loud in
hmm
front of other people.
yeah.
And I think that's your thing too. And you're guided, you're waiting, and you're eager and you're willing to do whatever it is the Lord would have for you to do. And again, the path God made for you. He had you here, he had you in New York, and then he had you step by step by
hmm
step. And honestly, I used to live in Michigan. Michigan's cold, Georgia's warm, so I'm all about Georgia. So,
Yeah,
I and how
definitely.
I got here. I mean, the whole thing is just such a fabulous hand of God,
hmm
just blessing, blessing, blessing.
Yeah,
This has been fabulous.
yeah.
Anyway, thank you, Rob, for coming and
Thank you.
sharing your testimony and sharing your books and what the Lord has been doing. And maybe in a few months we'll have you come back and we'll talk about the next thing that the
Yeah,
Lord
thank you for
would
having me.
have for you
Yeah,
to do.
yeah.
So that's it.
Thank
This has been a fabulous time together, and we'll see you next week on the Blind Zone.